functions during the pandemic, the Capitol physician is urging lawmakers to sign up for the vaccine. In a letter to Congress, Dr. Brian Monahan said there is no reason for anyone to defer the shots, adding that the benefit far exceeds any small risk. Lawmakers are in the process of finalizing the next coronavirus relief bill, which includes billions of dollars for vaccine distribution.
In the meantime, the House has approved a two-day stopgap funding bill as they continue to work out that relief bill. Vice President Mike Pence, his wife Karen, and Surgeon General Jerome Adams also, by the way, received their first vaccine shots today. This happened at the White House. Amazon warehouse workers in Alabama are getting closer to voting on whether to form the first union at the company here in the U.S. We get more on that from NPR's Alina Selyuk.
The National Labor Relations Board has already said the unionization vote should happen at Amazon's warehouse in Bessemer, Alabama. Hundreds of workers there had signed cards looking to be represented by the Retail, Wholesale, and Department Store Union. Amazon, in response, has argued they did not represent the majority of its employees' views and touted its pay and benefits. Note Amazon is among NPR's recent financial supporters. Unions are prominent at Amazon in Europe, but in the U.S., this could be the first union at one of the country's largest employers. The company, the union, and the NLRB now need to sort out procedural and other disputes before a vote can be scheduled. Alina Selyuk, NPR News.
This is NPR.
And this is CPR News. I'm Natalia Navarro. Denver's top law enforcement watchdog is stepping down. Denverites David Sachs has more.
Nick Mitchell has served as the city's independent monitor for 8 years, and he's earned a reputation for his reform efforts. Now, the U.S. Justice Department has tapped him to reform the world's largest jail system in Los Angeles. This comes less than 2 weeks after Mitchell released a scathing report that found big concerns with the Denver Police Department's response to protests calling for racial justice over the summer. That includes some uses of violence without cause. Mitchell oversaw thousands of investigations into police misconduct and guided changes in the sheriff's department after the deaths of 2 black inmates in the county jail. His last day is January 4th. David Sachs, Denverite.
The first doses of a COVID-19 vaccine were administered in Gunnison County this week. Among the first to receive it was Lucy Hutchins, a resident of the nearby Senior Care Center.
It was thrilling. I'm just amazed to be here, be part of all of it.
Emergency medical physician Dr. Shay Career and his wife Lauren Gibbons, who works at the Senior Care Center, also got vaccinated. It was an emotional moment for the pair.
For me, it's going to be huge. Just
yeah, it's been tough at times. It takes its toll emotionally, and I'm hopeful for the vaccine, but I know we have a long road ahead.
Gunnison County received 300 doses of the Pfizer vaccine. A new herd of bison now lives on a 25,000-acre wildlife refuge in southeastern Colorado's Bent County. 7 adult females, 2 adult males, and a male calf were a part of Colorado State University's research herd, bred to conserve the genetics of North America's original bison. Nicole Rose Marino leads the Southern Plains Land Trust, which runs the refuge. She says the shortgrass prairie there is considered a biodiversity hotspot.
It's not flat. These are rolling grasslands with a lot of topography and therefore a lot of different microhabitats.
Rose Marino says the area is home.
Support for NPR comes from this station and from C3. C3.ai software enables organizations to use artificial intelligence at enterprise scale, solving previously unsolvable business problems. Learn more at C3.ai. And from Total Wine & More, where in-store teams can recommend a bottle of wine, spirit, or beer for the holidays. Shoppers can explore more than 8,000 wines, 2,500 beers, and 3,000 spirits. More at TotalWine.com.
This is All Things Considered from NPR News. I'm Elsa Chang in Los Angeles.
And I'm Audie Cornish in Washington, D.C. A typical day for Russell Cross goes something like this. He's sitting in his warehouse office near the Cleveland airport, and the phone rings.
And it'll be Mr. Jones, and he's had a pizza shop and COVID pretty much put them out of business.
A restaurant out of business is Cross's business. He runs an online auction company called Auction Factory that will work with a bistro owner or pizza shop guy to basically sell off what's left of their business.
We come out there, we assess the situation, we look at what it's going to take to extract all that equipment off the property so we can hand over the keys to the landlord and get out from paying that rent. Chances are he doesn't have it anyways. If he can't afford to buy cheese, he's not going to be able to afford to pay the rent.
That is the situation thousands of restaurants are in right now. According to a November survey from the National Restaurant Association, 110,000 restaurants, over 1 in 6, have closed their doors this year, either permanently or on a long-term basis, which is why Russell Cross's Cleveland warehouse is packed.
Char broilers, griddles, ovens.
Cross's team collects it all.
Suspension ovens, ice machines, ice cream machines.
They repair it.
Tables, chairs, booths, plates, dinnerware, stemware, plateware.
And eventually help the original owners sell it.
Silverware, salt, pepper shake. I mean, we sell everything because every dollar counts.
But until that happens, it sits in his warehouse. 30,000 square feet, packed wall to wall with what's left of people's dreams.
I mean, I've got a lady that was sitting there just bawling her eyes out, and I've got other couples that said, thank God you're here because we need to move on.
These days, what Cross says he sees most of all is that a good number of restaurant owners can't make the math work. Even with the loans the government gave out earlier in the pandemic, their rents are coming due.
If you're paying $6,000 a month and you're 7 months behind, you're 42 G's in the hole. That's a lot of $10 pizzas to make $42,000. So they know that there's no end in sight for them.
There's finally traction for the bipartisan compromise relief bill in Congress with provisions for small businesses. But for thousands of smaller, independently run restaurants, it could be too little, too late. At least that's what Andrew Janung is hearing. He's an American based in Hong Kong and writes a food industry newsletter. It's called Family Meal.
I've stopped writing about closures altogether because they're coming at such an intense speed.
His readers are chefs, investors, waitstaff, real estate people. And Andrew Janung says his readers care a lot about that bipartisan COVID relief bill. The Senate decided not to take up the version passed by the House. That one would provide grants, not loans, with fewer strings attached, and direct that aid to mostly smaller, non-chain restaurants. Senator Susan Collins of Maine helped shape this part of the Senate relief bill, and her office claims that grants without conditions could be taken advantage of. Quote, a celebrity chef who owns a restaurant could pocket the federal grant money or use it to settle old debts unrelated to the pandemic and not pay any of his or her staff. Now, the House bill does require restaurants to spend some money on staff, just with fewer conditions. And many restaurants want more flexibility after the first round of support from Congress earlier this year, which included the Paycheck Protection Program.
It's called the Paycheck Protection Program for a reason. It has a good outcome in mind, which is that people will continue to be paid during this pandemic. But from the perspective of restaurateurs trying to run restaurants, labor is not the only cost.
Remember, restaurants have stumbled through nearly 10 months of public health closures, partial reopenings. They pivoted to outdoor dining and delivery and takeout, all stuff that made it more expensive to run a restaurant, not less.
You become sort of a pass-through unemployment agency, but you're a pass-through unemployment agency that at the same time is slowly going out of business yourself.
Some Paycheck Protection Program funding the first time around was snapped up by big franchises, Ruby Tuesday, TGI Fridays, P.F. Chang's. Black and brown restaurant owners, independent operators who didn't have the sway with the banks doing the lending, were at the back of the line. Naya Marshall owns Ivy Kitchen and Cocktails, a little place she opened late last year on the east side of Detroit. She lost 75% of her pre-pandemic revenue. Back in March, she was hoping the first coronavirus relief package would help her out.
You're hearing all this information about resources, capital resources that are available to you. And I literally did not hear from my bank until probably the end of April when the second round came.
She was denied. And she heard a bunch of reasons why. That her business was too new, that the program was overwhelmed with requests. She ended up getting some money from a city grant program, but that only lasted so long before a recent state mandate shut down dining. For Naya Marshall, she couldn't afford to keep those employees and operate during a global pandemic. She still had to pay for insurance, utilities, and then there was the cost of doing everything she could to hold on to the customers she had.
It's cleaning supplies, it's decontamination, because you want to make sure that your customers know that you do understand that COVID is real, you take it very seriously, and you want to provide them with the most sanitized place that you possibly can. And so these things cost money. Having gloves, masks for the guests, because many guests still come in, or try to come in, I should say, without masks, even though we are on a mask mandate. So these things cost money.
How have you changed your business model?
We had to literally change the menu to more of a carry-out style, even though that wasn't the intent when the concept began.
What kinds of foods did that end up looking like?
So it ended up looking like burgers, sandwiches, salads. Even though we had limited options for those on the menu, that became primary components of the menu. Chicken, things of that nature. We did a fresh smoked hen before.
You sound a little disappointed. You said burger with a tone in your voice that said, not the plan.
Yeah, no, it wasn't.
Naya Marshall can laugh about changes to her menu. Small challenges like that would be manageable if the bigger challenges weren't so relentless.
We had our mandate come right down before the holiday of Thanksgiving. And I had to let my staff go a week and a half before Thanksgiving. And now we're forced to do it again, likely a week before Christmas. That's unfair, it's cruel, and it's a tough thing for someone in my position to deal with and live with every single day.
The new relief deal emerging from Congress would still require that restaurants spend 60% of their PPP loans on payroll if they want the loan to be forgiven. The remaining 40% of the loan can be spent on things like rent or now equipment for outdoor dining and COVID precautions. Still, given the hit that most restaurants are taking, food industry writer Andrew Janung says the only thing that will really bail out the restaurant industry at this point is the COVID vaccine.
Whatever the federal government puts out next will just be another Band-Aid. Even if they give restaurants everything they want, it's just going to tide people over until hopefully we can get back to normal.
That is a new normal.
My initial impression was that it'd be like the Roaring 20s. Everyone gets a vaccine, everyone goes out, it's this big party on the streets, but I think a lot of people are still going to be wary and also just have a changed relationship to dining.
Meaning that the future of restaurants will have to do with more than just getting through this winter with or without government support.
Nurses are always in short supply. The pandemic intensified that shortage, creating a huge surge in demand for temporary nurses. And that booming gig economy, especially in long-term care, has allowed some nurses to double their pay. Hear more next week on All Things Considered by asking your smart speaker to play NPR or your local station by name. And you're listening to All Things Considered from NPR News. As U.S. forces withdraw from Afghanistan, the situation in the country is looking more dire. Under an agreement negotiated with the Taliban, the Trump administration intends to leave just 2,500 troops in place by early next month. And already it appears the Afghan government is struggling to maintain control. NPR's Dia Hadid reports from Kabul.
In a mosque on the outskirts of this city, a preacher tells the crowd that the Taliban, with their primitive guns, brought American troops to their knees. The Afghan government, he says,